Part of our call as Christians is to share what God has done for us. Some of us are more comfortable with this than others. We thought it would be good to have a conversation with some of our ministry partners out in the field. So we're grateful to hear your wisdom today. Thank you for joining us. In a moment, they'll introduce themselves. I'm Pastor Laura Osborne. I'm on staff with the Reformed Church in America, ordained 11 years now, and I'm the coordinator for interreligious relations. So connecting churches to their neighbors of another faith or individuals to their neighbors of another faith. And I also work with international students at Western Michigan University through international campus ministry. Not all that fits on one business card. I've tried. So grateful to have you all here today. We've collected some folks from around the country and some that traverse out of the country for their ministry. So again, grateful you're here today. We have a few questions we're going to ask you all. And before we get started with your first answers, just share who you are and what your ministry context is. So with that said, my colleague Ricky Velazquez will be just keeping an eye on the comments on Facebook. And if we have time at the end, we'll answer those comments or questions. If not, we will follow up after this session with some stories or other questions or comments as needed. So here we go. Reverend Terry will start us off with the topic of evangelism. When that comes up in your world, how would you describe it in your own words? What is it to you?
I'm going to tell you a very short story. I was serving at the Brighton Heights Reformed Church in Staten Island at the very beginning of our interfaith effort to serve hungry and homeless people. And I was in the church by myself, and we had a tiny little food pantry that was really kind of in the closet next to the pastor's office. The pastor back then was the Reverend Roland Ratmeyer. And it was after soup kitchen and food pantry was over, and we were sweeping up and cleaning up, and I was all by myself, and then it was late in the afternoon, and all of a sudden there was this pounding on the door of the church, right, the back door by the pastor's office. And I got scared because I was by myself, you know. And then there was a guy yelling on the other side, and he was saying, "Hey, open up that door. Open up this door for me." And I was like, "Well, wait a second. Who are you? What's going on?" And he says, "Hey, aren't you supposed to feed the hungry? Well, I'm hungry. Open up the door and feed me." And you know what? I thought to myself after I had run into the pastor's office and locked the door, he's got a point. He's hungry. He's expecting me to feed him. So feeling a little sheepish for my fear, I went to the door. I opened up the door, and I fed him what we had left over in the refrigerator. And he was grateful. And that was 36 years ago. And you know what? I still keep in touch with the guy. That day changed me more than it changed him. And so let me say to you, I believe evangelism is both our personal and our public witness testimony about the meaning, the message, and the mission of the God who is the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ and of Jesus himself, who is the reflection of the love of the Father.
Awesome. Thanks, Terry. Great way to start us off. I think we've all had that. Well, in some way, someone knocking on our doors, your church, what are you doing? Great. Chris, how would you answer that?
Yeah, in my context, I work for Young Life. So we work with adolescents and middle school, high school, college students. And we talk about evangelism through friendship, that we're always inviting. We want to kind of frame things around, we want to invite kids, students to consider who Jesus is, to take a look at him. And so how do we introduce them to Jesus? Through friendships, and that being our bridge, to share the gospel with them. And I think a lot of times we get to introduce people to Jesus, but there's also the reality is Jesus will introduce himself to them as well. And so having an eye for how the Spirit is working in people's lives is significant, I think, in evangelism. And just one verse that comes to mind with this question is in John. Jesus is calling the disciples, And Philip says to Nathaniel, he says, I found the one that the prophets were talking about. And he's this guy, Jesus from Nazareth. And Nathaniel says, can anything good come from Nazareth? And Philip says, come and see. And so the come and see part is, I think, a piece of evangelism. Come and see who Jesus is.
Excellent. Yeah, come and see. I work with one of your colleagues at Western Michigan University, and he talks a lot about that. So I'm grateful to have you all working. Your colleague, Crystal, we'll jump over to you. Tell us about your ministry context and how would you answer this question?
I am here in Greater Holland doing Young Life, as well as work at Holland Public Schools in the middle school setting, and have 3 teenage boys at home. And so I think spending a lot of time with kids, and I think Chris covered a lot of what I would say about ministry and doing life with kids. I will probably speak a bit more on leaders, my college leaders and peers. One of the things that I've realized discipleship is living life alongside of people. Chris talked about the invitation to allow someone into a space with you so that they get to see and experience Christ firsthand in a hands-on way. The other piece that I am grateful and uniquely have the ability to also disciple through is creativity, whether that's singing, art, dancing. Those are also ways that I get to show people who Christ is in a very different way that allows them to enter that space and take away something maybe they didn't even intend on taking away versus, doing the direct, this is what I want you to know, this is what I want you to see. I find that the creative arts, performing arts have allowed me to enter in spaces that I wouldn't necessarily directly take my typical discipleship formula to. And so it is awesome to have this space in place, whether it's on Facebook, in churches, in schools, to share who God created me to be, and also give them an opportunity to see what they have the ability to have also with the relationship with Jesus Christ.
Yeah, your story is interweaving with their story and connecting in God's story in all sorts of different ways. It's beautiful. Thank you. Yakuv, tell us who you are and what do you think about this question?
Hi, thank you so much. I'm Yakuv, and I'm a pastor at Nepali Speaking Community Church here in Grand Rapids, and I am originally from Nepal. So my context is a little bit different. I came and I grew up, actually among mostly Hindus and Buddhist neighborhood. So most of my friends are still Hindus or Buddhist. So for me, when I was young, I also grew up in a pastor's family. So there was always a part of that thing that you have to go out and share the gospel. So from my early age, I was taught that you need to share the gospel. So that is evangelism. So for us, it is always going out and telling others that, hey, who Jesus is, because rest of our friends and family, other neighbors they're Hindus and Buddhists. So that kind of context is where I come from. So in that sense, for me, Charles Spurgeon's definition of evangelism makes sense to me. So he says that one beggar telling to another where the bread is, right? So I always felt that evangelism is like where the bread is. I have this bread, I have found this one. So where the bread is now, hey, you have to come and see this one. So that is the context I come from, where we always go out with various means like, drama, skit, tracks distribution, everything, whatever means we can. So we always go out. So for me, evangelism is, yes, there's sharing the gospel, the truth, who Jesus is, what he did, and who he is, and inviting people to him. So that's the gospel as evangelism for me.
Excellent. Going out and inviting in. It's good. Of course, last but not least, Ozzie, tell us a little bit about where you are and what this question means to you.
Yeah. So the our church is in Linwood, and I'm helping with a church plat in Wilmington. And the areas that we're in is really it's like a ethnic minorities. It's a low income, and yeah, it's what I guess what you would consider a hard place. My pastor calls it the hood, right? So we're literally in the hood, and you would be surprised though. There's literally churches in every corner over here, and a lot of the people here, well, in Linwood, they're either Catholics, a lot of Catholic background, a lot of Mexicans, and yeah, there's literally churches in every corner. But at the same time, sometimes we think like, man, like why is if there's so many churches, Christ should be prospering here, But see, the thing is that I feel that a lot of these churches don't necessarily actually try to reach out because in a lot of these communities, a lot of people have a family member that's religious, that come from a Catholic background, but none of them really know who Christ is and what he did and how he has redeemed us to God, And a verse that kind of comes to mind is it's in Romans chapter 10, verse 14. I'll just kind of read it real quick. It says, "How then will they call on him whom they have not believed? How are they to believe in him in whom they have never heard? And how are they to hear without someone preaching? And how are they to preach unless they are sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who preach the good news." And so I feel that we're in Linwood and in Wilmington, this is really key because I mean, a lot of the people there, they see churches on every corner. They have a concept of God, but they don't know who he is and what God has done. So when I think about what is evangelism, I think about the gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ saving us from our sins, And so what we do, I help out with evangelism. I coordinate the days when we actually go out into the streets and we talk to people. We tell them, hey man, we're just out here, we're sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ. Have you ever heard the gospel? Are you familiar with the gospel? And they'll say, oh yeah, that sounds familiar. I know of Jesus, but they do not know that they are sinners before God, So we share the commandments of God. We show them the law of God, and we say like, look, this is what the law of God says about our lives, that we are sinners and condemned. But God is graceful and merciful, and we share the redemptive work of Christ and what he has done. And you'd be surprised, a lot of people here, since they all have either a family member that's religious or they have a concept of God, I've hardly had any trouble in this context because a lot of them, they would have a type of reverence towards God, because they have, a family member that may believe in God or whatever it may be. And so it's always been really simple. And so that's why we go out and we minister to them. We proclaim the gospel. We share the gospel of Jesus Christ, and they just listen, man. There's been times where I've spoken to gang members, and a lot of them, man, they're probably the easiest persons I've ever spoken to, rather than like, maybe like a middle class person that's working and whatnot. They're usually the most stubborn. Either they'll be atheists or they won't agree. They'll have, but so that's what I found very interesting is that a lot of these people, they're like, a lot of them want to hear about God because a lot of them are hurting. They're going through, they've seen stuff, they've probably lost friends, whatever it may be, and they're really open to hearing the proclamation of the gospel. And I tried for our Wilmington plant, that's what I try to emphasize in us, kind of stepping out of our comfort zones and actually proclaiming so that people can know of Christ and what he has done for us.
Wonderful. And for those who don't know where Linwood's at, that's Southern California, around LA area. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Well, since we left off with you, Ozzy, we'll dig into the next question, starting with you. So our team dug into lots of hopes and fears. We have lots of hope around, of course, our hope in Christ, but sharing that with others. But there's some folks that when you say evangelism, they kind of hide, right? Like, oh, no, not me. But it's sharing our stories, right? We all have a story. So what are your hopes and fears, Ozzy, around evangelism?
Yeah, I guess I'll try to answer this in two parts. My hope when evangelizing is for people to come to know Christ. And I'll tell you this, I've been evangelizing for a while. I have a brother who evangelizes by my house. He goes to another church, but I met him. He was evangelizing, and then I was evangelizing, and we came across each other, and then we became friends after that. And then we've been evangelizing together for a while. And he's out on the street 4 days a week evangelizing. He is faithful. And I try to go out with him 2 times a week or whenever I can. And we've been doing this for a while. And I'll tell you this, it's almost heartbreaking because almost every person that I've spoken to, Lord willing, in the future, they come to Christ, but there's always been a negative feedback. They don't want to know about Christ. That's a fear that's almost like a reality, where a lot of people just don't want to know about Christ. But I always try to remember, how beautiful are the feet of those who share the gospel. I know that as long as I'm faithful, even if it's just one person that comes to know Christ, then that is more than enough for me, just to be as faithful to God as much as I can. Another fear is that just thinking about the church and how it's a scary thing to evangelize. I'll say that myself. It's very scary. I remember one time when I was going to Huntington Beach to evangelize, I was with my wife, we were driving there, and I remember I had a fear in my heart. My heart was just, for some reason, I was just going out there and I was just thinking like, man, what if I'm just rejected? Rejection is always just a fear. What if people just think I'm dumb and people just don't want to hear me, and I had a big fear of just negative feedback from people, and evangelism is scary. But, one thing that I always tell people is like, man, if you really want to grow in actually sharing and proclaiming the gospel, find someone who does it. For me, I started going out with certain brothers who were already, who have evangelized longer than I have. And I wouldn't even speak. I would just stand right next to them, and then they would evangelize and I would just listen. And my biggest fear is that for the church is for people to kind of just be scared of actually, sharing the gospel, maybe a little timid, it's like that for everyone, but it's actually taking those baby steps towards working your way towards being able to build confidence and to share more and more. The best thing you could do is find someone who's more experienced so that you could be encouraged and get the tools and strength to know how to share your faith as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. Thank you. We'll just go in reverse order. Yakuv, hopes and fears.
Yes, again, as Ozzy said, that the hope of evangelizing, sharing gospel is that people that I have been saying would know Christ and come to faith. Along with that, I also always have a hope. My context again is I'm working among immigrant people group. So they always have something, issues, some addiction, all kind of things. So I always hope gospel will not just bring them, one place to another or in our church or come to Christ, but I want to see their lives being transformed actually completely. So that's always hope. But more than hope, I also want to talk about, the fears. I think it's very real. As Ozzy said, that fear is real even when I share the gospel. Over the period, I have been involving in evangelizing, sharing gospel when I was very young, like 6th, 7th grade. My whole family actually come from that background. So we always go out, share gospel, distribute tracts, or do some drama, skit, all kind of thing. But then over the period, I realized that one of the fears that I have seen is that, sometimes I lack myself deep conviction. And that creates actually fear. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Unless that deep conviction I have from God, from the Holy Spirit, that, this is the best thing that we could offer to anyone, until that conviction is there inside, it's actually difficult to do evangelism. So that is, I think, fear factor for most of us, and even sometimes for me. So I always pray, Lord, give me that conviction every day as I go out and share the gospel. So that is, I think, the scariest thing for all of us. And that is the cause, kind of keeps us away from the gospel, sharing gospel.
Yeah, good. Prayer I say often is, Lord, who do you want me to speak to today to share your word with? Good. Thank you. Crystal, hopes and fears.
I'm going to start off with fears. I taught before I came on staff with Young Life, and I remember the first time doing what we call contact work, where we go into the schools, we go to where kids are. And here I was going into a high school building with no one that I knew. It was somehow supposed to, at that time, it was always the story of sit down at the lunch table with kids. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm a teacher, but honestly, it wasn't very often that I would sit down with kids to eat lunch. I was usually in the teacher's lounge during that time. And I remember pulling up to the parking lot and thinking, oh my gosh, really? Am I about to walk into this school and somehow make my way into a lunchroom with high school kids and middle school kids? And so, like you say, the fear is real. And the reality, it's the enemy who would want us to say, you know what? They're not going to listen to me. They're not going to want to hear what I have to say. They don't even want to know who I am. And I think the fear is that when I start to forget who has already gone into that school before me, that's where the fear comes up. But when I stop and I pray and I remind myself of the responsibility really that I've been given to go into the school and bring the gospel, there is a peace that comes. And so in that, as I enter into these spaces and places, the hope is always that I bring a sense of peace, God's presence with me, whether it's having a conversation about boyfriends, whether it's having a conversation about sports, whether it's a conversation
There we go.
that my life lives, breathes, speaks who God is by my actions, my day-to-day. And even to thinking of just how I interact anywhere, whether it's in the school, whether it's the grocery store, whether it's with my neighbor. Am I speaking the gospel? Am I showing someone who God is versus who I am, who Young Life is, who Holland Public Schools? You know, Jesus is the main purpose and who I want to show and hope that kids, adults, peers, friends, family receive as they encounter time with me.
That's beautiful. Many people would be scared to walk into a middle school cafeteria or high school cafeteria in general. And then you add bringing the gospel in there, that might just send some people for the hills. But Young Life and Youth for Christ and so many groups are experts. You're experts at that. I did 7 years in youth ministry, and I love these kids still to this day, and they're grown adults with their own kiddos. One of my middle school kiddos at one time, we were talking about Jesus, and she's like, yeah, I like him. He's never done me wrong. It just was a fun way to start the conversation. So I just remember that. All right, we'll start there. Thank you, Crystal. Chris, coming over to you. Hopes and fear.
Laura, I'm wondering if you want to go to Ricky, because I don't think he's gone yet.
Ricky is hanging out to keep an eye on the comments, so we're not avoiding him. Thank you for saying that.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Good. Hopes and fears. I think in regards to hopes, it reminds me of my pastor, Reverend Dr. Denise Kingdom Greer here at Maple Avenue, would talk about embracing, and the fact that are we embracing people in regards to, is it something that we are just taking to them and throwing at them, or are we collectively embracing them? And that goes back to kind of the methodology we use in Young Life as well, as friendships and long-term relationships. And some of the fears that go with that when you think about friendships is that there would be rejection at some point, either rejection up front when you first meet somebody because you want to develop a friendship, or maybe rejection along the way and maybe years later. That I've had this reality where people who I knew were kids and now adults reject what we were sharing with them. And so I think there's some fear in that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. You brought that up. The RCA is working through a course with the Reverend Dr. Denise Kingdom Greer, outreach to embracing. So that, yes, we're reaching out. How are we embracing as well? So excellent. Thank you, Chris. And Terry, hopes and fears.
Well, let me begin with fear. Jesus's mission message, as it comes out of the 4th chapter of Luke, when he stands up in that synagogue and he reads from the Haftorah, he reads from Isaiah, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he's anointed me to bring glad tidings to the poor, sent me to proclaim liberty to the captives, recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free, and to proclaim a year acceptable to the Lord." That's rooted right in Isaiah 61, which is entitled "The Mission to the Afflicted." And my great fear is that we don't grasp fully that mission of Jesus. In order for us to fully reflect who Jesus is, how Jesus lived, why Jesus died, and how Jesus died, is to embrace his proclamation, his own proclamation that describes what his ministry is about. And I think that comes to me as a white person in ministry, in that I grew up learning that sin is a very personal thing and an individual thing. And it took me a long time to understand that the great evil of our world, and our world is a battle between the righteousness of God and the evil of this world, that sin can be systemic, and that sin can be corporate, and that we can live in sin and not see our sin. That's what scares me. That's the fear, that if we stay in an individual understanding of sin, we never grasp the reality. As a white person and how I grew up, everything looks fine to me. Everything looks fine to me growing up. I didn't see other people suffering. When I took on my work at Project Hospitality, and the majority of our work, almost the entirety of our work, are in communities of color here in Staten Island and New York City, I enter into a world where African-American Christians suffer under the sin that white Christians have perpetuated by seeing the world as okay and not realizing how our foot is on somebody else's neck. Something that became very literal in the death of George Floyd, and for us on Staten Island in the death of Eric Garner, just 3 blocks from where I live. But that people live with that people live with that oppression and come to see the hope and salvation of God in Jesus by living out that oppression and seeking justice and righteousness and the wholeness. And we miss that. We struggle with not acknowledging racism as sin, xenophobia, the fear of immigrants as sin, misogyny as sin, heterosexism as sin, the systems of poverty as sin. And if we don't get that, we're never going to be able to shape the world that will be ready for his return. Because I really think our mission, I think the point of evangelism is to make the world ready, more righteous, more loving, so that justice is flowing down, righteousness is flowing down like a river of water from that mountain, as Dr. King says. And we need to be able to create and foster that world and make it happen. We got to break the chains of oppression. We got to do what we sing in that song at Christmas. Oh, holy night, right? Slave is our brother. Jesus came to break the chains of oppression. How many people sing that on Christmas Eve? Do we ever realize, what we're talking about? Once the baby grows up, that's my fear, is we don't see the depth of where we have to go, and the depth of who Jesus is and how Jesus is connected to the whole history of the God of Israel, all the way back to Genesis. God is talking to us. And finally, I fear that we don't grasp that sense of the reign of God, that Jesus proclaims the reign. He's not talking about himself. He's talking about his Father. He's talking about the God of Israel. He's talking about a reign of righteousness and peace, justice and mercy. And that's what we have to impart with other people. And it's really hard because we stay to who we are, who we know, who looks like us, talks like us, is like-minded like us. And if we just move out of the sphere like God moved out of his sphere to enter into our world in Bethlehem, we need to enter into other people's worlds. When we can acknowledge the presence of God in all people and heal the woundedness that makes people live less human lives because of that woundedness. When we make people fully human as God made himself fully human, then I think I will see hope in the world that can become ready for God again.
We got a lot of work to do, don't we? That's, we could keep going on that the rest of the day. There's so much there. Thank you, Pastor Terry, with the work you're doing in that area you're at. And we're all in different areas, and we are all called to do this work. And it looks different, a little bit different each way. How did you get to where you are with evangelism? Are you still working on kind of how you approach it? Did you have a mentor maybe? Ozzie talked about someone that walked alongside him as he was, it's like, hey, I need to learn more about this and get a little more comfortable. So he had someone that walked alongside him. Is there a specific approach that you like, maybe a resource? I referenced Youth for Christ earlier. When I was in youth ministry, I went a part of their 3-story evangelism: my story, God's story, someone else's story. And that just always swirls in my head when I'm talking to someone about the gospel. So yeah, with that said, there's a question in there somewhere. Do you have someone that's walked alongside you or helped form you into your approach right now? Who wants to tackle that one first? I'll toss it out. Chris.
I'll go because I want to go after Terry. Because one of the things I was thinking about when hearing about the city work that's being done is some things that I'm thinking about. So I've been formed by Young Life as a mission, which has been around for 75 years. But I'm also thinking about how is it changing today and how we do evangelism. And this is part of that is a thought that I've had for a while, is that when we serve other people, the image of God within us comes alive. And so I've heard this a little bit in our organization's context, where they would take kids on some service trip and they're not followers of Jesus yet, but that is the part of the process. And I think that it's probably true. This is my new thing that I'm thinking about. When we think about social justice issues and, working with and for the marginalized in our world, that the image of God is the foundation of what we need to be thinking about. Right? Everybody's child of God, and how does that come into play? So that's just another piece that's kind of morphing in my mind of like, how does that work? Because I do think that will draw people to Jesus as we do that work.
Yep. You said that so well. Yakuv, what would you add to that?
Yeah, for me, my mentor, or whatever we call it, I grew in a tradition or church where verbal evangelism was highly prioritized. That's how actually Christianity grew in Nepal. So they were so verbal, actually. So when I was 6, 7, 8th grade, I have vivid memory that we used to go out and share the gospel, give the tracts or the. But as I grew up older and older, and now I began to realize some of those things are very good. We should keep doing that, and I still do that, sharing the gospel. But we were missing some of the things in terms of approach. So I realized there are at least 3 things that I think I must have, or anyone must have, or Christians must have to share the gospel. For example, rather than simply sharing gospel, we need to be the gospel. Actually, our character should be, my character should be reflect. I was never given that kind of teaching before. We just need to share the gospel. Was a teaching given to me, but I realized that I think being the gospel, becoming the gospel in our character is the pre-evangelism. That itself is actually in many ways is evangelism. To especially in my context where lots of Hindus and Buddhists, non-Christians are watching at us, So that become actually a kind of pre-evangelism. And after that follows, as Terry was saying about the social work, doing the gospel. I think that's key thing again. And as we do the gospel work, like other good things in the community, in the society, even my own context, doing all kind of good things to community, there comes a point where I have to share the gospel. So being the gospel, doing the gospel, and speaking the gospel, I think these are the things I was missing prior to this. I was never taught. And I realized that I think these are the things anyone or myself must have in an approach. So approach could be many ways. There are many methods to share the gospel, but these are the things I think overall captures that one must have in order to share the gospel. I mean, anyone can share the gospel, but to share this gospel effectively, I think these are the things, or the characters, whatever we call it, I think need to have.
Yeah, I appreciate that. How you have your life, you still have that foundation, but it's still growing, it's still evolving, and I very much appreciate that. Thank you. Crystal, anything to add to those?
I remember being at camp my first year on staff. Actually, was the first thing I did as a staff member. And during cabin time, which was after one of the talks at club, a student looked at me and said, "Why do we need to know this now, seeing how most of you don't really have a relationship or a strong relationship with Christ until you're an adult? Like, why can't I just have my time, live my life now, and do whatever I want to? And then, maybe when I graduate, have a relationship with Christ." And that really has stuck with me, because working with teens, you have to make Jesus relevant for them. And I think what had happened in some of the storytelling is we weren't telling the story of the here and now. We were telling of the story of kind of the past, or we were making up stories. And I think it's important in what has newly shaped how I do evangelism and storytelling is telling people what God is doing right now, right here. Not what he did do, not what I think maybe this was God, but what is he doing in my life? And also, are people seeing evidence of that work he is doing?
Mm-hmm.
Going back to, like you say, the character. Do people see us in the same light, or are we just speaking words to them, but living a different life? And so, especially with my children, I have to walk the walk and talk the talk. And, whether we like it or not is, how do we make God cool for them? How do we make the gospel story so important that they see how it is a part of their current story as a sixth grader, as a junior in high school, as a college student, wherever it may be. And so it really has changed how I'm not just talking to kids, I'm actually sharing what God is doing in my life today, whether it's in the sunset that we get to see first hour as it rise, or the sunrise as we see God's handiwork, or it's the prayers that we've been praying for them or for us, and sharing what that prayer is doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I can speak to what God is doing in my life, right? And that's where we start. Excellent. Terry, and then I'm going to end with Ozzie, because he's got a story he can share. So Terry, do you have anything else to add to that? How you kind of settled into where you are? You've been doing this for a long time in your area. Anyone that walked alongside you, or you're like, this was a aha moment? Maybe it was the fellow banging on the door.
So I know it's been 36 years, but I don't think I settled in yet. I want to say first that give thanks to God for my parents, because they raised us steeped in the light of the gospel. My dad was a daily churchgoer. We all went together as a family to church. They sent us to a Catholic Christian school, which made a difference in my life for 13 years, because we lived this and breathed it in school, in the classroom, on the playground. We lived the life of discipleship. I would say there were some aha moments, as they say, right? In third grade or fourth grade, I can't really remember. I think third grade, I read 2 books that made a big difference in my life. One was called Freedom Train, and it was the story of Harriet Tubman. And the second was called Snowbound, and it was a Holocaust story. And it was my first introduction to what the Holocaust was. I'm pretty sure I was about maybe 9 years old at the time I read those. And that followed in the fourth grade. I remembered very, very vividly the assassination of Martin Luther King. I remember watching his funeral on television and standing through the whole funeral as though I had known this man, that I had no idea what he had suffered or what had happened in his life. And reading the book Peaceful Warrior, which was his biography for fourth graders at the time. Those were aha moments for me, realizing the depth of what needed to be done in our world to bring to light the message and mission and ministry of Jesus. And then in seventh grade, my pastor took me, my pastor, Reverend Aldo Toss, now gone on to be with God, took me to the Catholic Worker on the Lower East Side of Manhattan on a Friday night for Bible study. And there, Father Daniel Berrigan, who had an immense impact on my life, and Dorothy Day. And here I am, now at the age of 63, still impacted by that October 1970 on my 12th birthday. And following that impact in our neighborhood of Staten Island, I found this in the garage a few weeks ago, going through stuff. I found my baseball glove too, by the way. But this is a picture of a house on Staten Island near where I live, where there was a cross burning when I was in the 8th grade in Saturday, April 22nd, 1972. Could this happen in Oakwood? Oakwood's a neighborhood in Staten Island, and it did. And it was a Black family, a Christian family. They got burnt out of a neighborhood. And the next Sunday, our pastor brought those folks to live at his rectory where he lived, and he brought them to church, and they stood up in the pulpit. And he said, as Christians, we need to fight against the sin of racism. Holy cow, I can't believe I don't even remember getting this. And here it is, I framed it when I found it a few weeks ago to remind me of what impacted my life, to imagine that someone could touch somebody's house. That was the level of sin we needed to fight against. And finally, what deeply impacted me was I served as a missionary in Latin America, in Central America, and specifically in a refugee camp in El Salvador with the Lutheran Church, the refugee camp Faith and Hope, Fe y Esperanza. I went to seminary in Latin America, so I learned my theology out of a context of oppression. People got killed. While I never saw anyone shot, I helped a pastor pick up a body of a 15-year-old girl who was a catechetical teacher in her church, and she was gunned down with machine guns, and her knees were gone, her legs were. It was a mess, and we picked her up and we put her in a plastic bag, wrapped her in tarp, and he put her in the back of the station wagon, and he wouldn't let me go to bury her because he said that would be terrible for me, and I would get picked up by the police if people saw me with a body that had been shot. 15-year-old girl teaching the gospel in her church, and he went and he buried her by himself. Even the family was afraid to go and see her to her final resting place. I'll never forget that body. No, I will never. And that really shaped me. And I'm sorry that there's such vivid and evil, scenes, but it just reminds me of the need for redemption, the deep, deep need for redemption.
It's the truth. it's what we're living in. And we've so many saints that have gone before us, and teachers and leaders, and you share those well. Thank you, Pastor Terry. I thank you all for sharing today. Ozzie, if you would leave us with a story, then we'll wrap up our time, and then my colleague, Pastor Ricky, has a few closing words. You share with us, Ozzie.
Yeah, I don't think I could do any better than the story that Terry just shared, because yeah, that's really that's deep, you know. But yeah, I'm guessing you're referring to earlier how when I was sharing. Okay, cool. Yeah, so when I was evangelizing in Huntington Beach with a couple of brothers, we were out there. So basically what I would do is I would go up to people and I would ask them, you know, do you know the gospel? And a question I like to ask, which is a really good intro, is if you were to die today and stand before God, and God said, give me one reason why I should let you into heaven, where would that be? What would that be? And so that's kind of really good to see where they kind of stand. And yeah, so we were just asking this to different people. And then I came across this older gentleman who's seen us sharing the gospel. And we were speaking to him, and he was a Muslim man. He was older. And so when I asked him the question, he was giving me his answers according to what his Quran said. And then I realized, like, oh man, this guy's a Muslim. And so that experience really shocked me when I was first sharing, because I didn't realize that Muslims believed in Jesus, but they only believe him as a prophet. They also believe they have Moses in their Quran, and they have Abraham in their Quran. They have Mary as well. And so for me, it was kind of like, man, how do I go about this? You know, because I'm really used to sharing people who are either non-believers, they're agnostic, they don't really know, or they don't really care. That's usually what I come across. But when I came across this man, he was Muslim. And the funny thing about the Quran is that the Quran has it attacks the Christian faith. It attacks the Trinity. The Quran actually explains how Christ wasn't actually crucified, that Allah made it seem as if he was crucified, but he really wasn't, and Christ was ascended into heaven. So these were the things that he was telling me, and I'm over here, you know, I'm trying to share Christ and him crucified, and he's telling me, no, that didn't really happen. And so that just kind of threw me back. And I was just, you know, we were kind of just talking and whatnot, and I was kind of discussing with him, like his faith and why he believed that and whatnot. And yeah, I really didn't know how to go about this conversation. And so after that, I just got a hunger for apologetics. I started looking into the Muslim faith. I started seeing like what they believe. I actually bought a Quran myself. I was reading through it. I don't know if you guys heard of Nabil Qureshi. He is a Muslim convert to Christianity. He grew up Muslim, but then a Christian friend in him in college converted him into Christianity. And he has a book about the Muslim faith and Christian responses towards it. I picked that up. And so I got a little more educated when it came to the Muslim faith. And then that was like a year later, I'm in Huntington Beach again. And I come across these two young Muslim guys. I think they're like 18 and 19. And at that time, I was prepared. And so we started speaking. And my friend was first speaking to them. And I kind of just jumped in as well. And the hour was literally an hour-long conversation. And we were going back and forth, back and forth. He was saying, oh, the Quran says this. I was saying, wait, but the Bible says that. And it was really passionate. They were really passionate. I was really passionate. And yeah, that went on for like an hour. And then by the end of the conversation, the guy, he shook my hand. His name was actually, it was Noah and Muhammad. And Noah was the guy that I was kind of like conversing with. And at the end, he shook my hand. He's like, hey man, thank you for speaking with us. And he was explaining how normally the Christians that they've experienced is they're Christian that just condemn them. They'll have like a sign and they'll stand on like a high place and they'll say that they're going to hell, that they don't repent, this and that, you know, and but it says, but none of them really actually wanted to have a conversation, you know? And I was just kind of heartbroken about that. I'm like, man, that kind of sucks, you know, because it's like, okay, because I made sure to tell him, look, if you do not repent and place your faith in Christ, all that will be left for you is judgment. But I was reasoning with him. I was inviting him to repent of his sins and know of the grace of God. I was giving him both the law of God and the gospel, the good news, the redemption that we find in Jesus Christ. And so he was saying, no, no Christian has ever done that to him. He's never actually had a conversation with him. And so at that point, I started to see how important it is to be able to understand your faith, but also, depending on your context, understand what they believe or what they're going through and whatnot, and be able to relate and kind of reason with them. Kind of like how Paul, when he went to the Areopagus, it says that he reasoned the scriptures with the Stoics and the Greeks and all of them. He was reasoning with them from the scriptures. And I feel that that's something that Christians, when we evangelize and share the gospel, is something that we should learn to do as well.
Mm-hmm. I very much appreciate the respect that you have, as I work with folks from other faiths all the time, and the most beautiful conversations about faiths that are interwoven, especially in Islam or Abrahamic traditions. It's beautiful conversations that can happen, but being willing to step into that space. Thank you so much, all of you, for sharing. I will pass it over to Ricky. We'll close out our time. We could spend the rest of the day chatting, but.
Yes, I want to say thank you for everything you guys have shared. It's been a blessing. I know I shared part of this team. It's like one of my struggles as Christian. I've grown up my whole life. It has been that moment of thinking of evangelizing. And so your stories, your every single point of view here has been a blessing. And if I have to summarize the chat today, it's been an amen. An amen to what you guys said, what you guys have shared. It's the different points of view, from youth to immigrant, to the stories of social justice needed, and just it shows the importance of how this world needs the gospel, and more of us to kind of step up and yes, recognize that there's fears, there's insecurities, there's sometimes just moments where we feel uncomfortable, but there's victory, there's good things and blessings and great stories that come out of that. So thank you all for sharing. It's been a great time, and I just want to go ahead and make sure that everybody knows we are continuing this kind of session on the 16th. It's Tuesday night, 6 p.m. Eastern time. We'll be with more of wisdom shared with us with a different group, but we'll continue talking about the gospel, and just everybody who's been online, just take this and share, go out and share the gospel. It's so important. Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Chris, Crystal, Ozzie, Yakuv. It's been a blessing, honestly, from the bottom of my heart. And I think everybody chat would say the same thing. Amen. Thank you for what you guys have shared today.
Amen. Thank you.
Appreciate you all.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Have a good one, everyone. Blessings.
Bye-bye.